to learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
Hi, Realtor Growth listeners. Today I have Scott Turman. He is a technologist, entrepreneur, and author, and an owner of a publishing company. And there's probably a lot more hats that I'm not even saying. So thank you, Scott, for being here today.
Thank you for having me. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. So I always love starting out. What's your elevator pitch? If someone asks you, Scott, what do you do? What does your company do? How would you describe it?
So I own all things Bright Ray. I got the trademark for the word Bright Ray a couple of years back. So every one of my companies is Bright Ray something, consulting, publishing, yada, yada, yada. So Bright Ray Publishing, we write books for CEOs, founders, celebrities, we kind of do it through this interview process where we kind of pull the book out of your head on a weekly Zoom call. And then a couple months later, we have your book and we publish it, Amazon, get it in Barnes & Noble and Target and all those kind of places. That's kind of the 15-second pitch.
What does Bright Ray mean to you?
So Bright Ray, it's funny. I always back into trademarks, right? So what I do is I have an Excel spreadsheet of words I like. I like bright, but it was one of hundreds of words. I do combinatorics on it. So every combination of the words I like, then I run it through a GoDaddy to go find out if the domain is available. And then if it's not available, what's the point, right? So that was Bright Ray at the time that I went was the one thing that was available on for a couple grand, by the way. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't, it was still available. So that was kind of the reason I backed into it, filed the trademark a week later, and that's how I got here for the name.
Oh, all right, easy enough. Well, let's rewind. Who was a young Scott? I mean, you have so many hats now. Who was a young Scott?
Right. So years ago, I started my career, or a little bit into my career, I was at NASA. As a software engineer, kind of my specialty is cryptography. And then I was, I got hired there as kind of like my dream job. I just come off a gig for working for the House of Representatives. They were flying me out on a Sunday, flying me back on a Thursday for like a year. I finally like, no, I don't want to fly out. I want to be around my now wife, then girlfriend. So it took the gig at NASA, and I didn't have a computer for a month. So I literally had an all-access badge at Kennedy Space Center, almost all-access badge at Kennedy Space Center. I was actually named after Scott Carpenter, who was the second American in space. My dad was a NASA engineer for Mercury. So I've been dreaming of this moment pretty much my entire life. And now I got an all-access badge, to basically just go kind of look at, Launchpad this and Launchpad that. And my dad was here. And, it was kind of awesome. And then parlay that into a consulting gig over at Disney. And then I just kept going on at Fortune 5, kind of down the list in the Florida area. And about 10 years ago, I kind of said, I'm tired of working for someone, created my own gig, Bright Ray Consulting. And then, all the way to today, which is now Bright Ray Publishing. Consulting's still going. This is a brand new company. And here we are.
All right, let's rewind a little bit. So your dad worked at NASA. Does that mean you were kind of forced into working at NASA or had the dream, wanted to follow in his footsteps? I mean, what was that idea behind there?
Yeah, so so all my science projects as a kid was was always rockets. It was always parachutes. It was always exploding something, right? So I definitely my dad had black and white photos of him standing in front of the Mercury capsule smoking a cigarette. It was the 50s for gosh sake. So NASA's kind of been in my consciousness forever. And then when I started working during when Jeb Bush was in office, governor here in Florida, I was writing the software that was making the lawmaking process for the state of Florida, allowing the representatives and the senators to vote and tally it up and draft a bill. So NASA I'd always dreamed of working there for sure, but it wasn't really on the radar's availability. And then the opportunity came up and I dropped everything, jumped in a plane, flew down, jumped in a car, drove, and it was kind of around the time of 9/11. So you get the job, and then the next day you come in, and that kind of happens. You come back like a week or two later, and now there's sniper towers and gentlemen with H&K MP5 machine guns like taking badges. So it went from a semi-militarized zone to a fully militarized zone at the time I was there. So
what?
Yeah, it was
okay, so
absolute dream.
You get the job, you're going through it when all this kind of while this is kind of happening, I mean,
Right.
if that was, I guess like you kind of said, it was kind of your dream. You didn't think you were going to get there, but when you got there, I mean, how do you celebrate? How do you say, okay, I'm going to go on my next path and go with Disney? I mean, I think for a lot of us, we get to our goal and then we go, okay, we got here, we can relax, we're done, we don't need to do anything else. But you kind of transitioned to other companies and kind of took it to the next level.
Yeah, I realized that once I had those 4 letters on my resume, I could lever that pretty much anywhere I wanted, as long as I had the skill set. I was there for a couple of years. I've been kind of recruited here and there for different positions, but I really wanted to work it. I knew there was an open position over it there it's kind of a consulting gig. I was just trying to work my way in through these darn recruiters, and they're just giving you half of what you really want, and they're just really difficult to kind of happen. So I FedExed my resume to the IT director at Disney, and then FedEx like 5 or 6 copies to different like leadership directly either to their house, which in retrospect was probably not an awesome idea. If I had some kid FedEx his resume to my house, I may be a little pissed nowadays. But one of the IT directors walked my resume right to the HR and contracts, and I actually got the contract. Yeah.
Okay. So let me just rewind it. Someone's listening right here, and they're a young kid, got out of college, right? I know you said you'd be pissed, and would there be any part of you that would be impressed because it brings back memories? Because that's how you become transition.
Of course, and that's the thing is that ultimately, honestly, I don't want to make anybody unhappy or make them mad, but who cares? Who cares if I disturb some guy who's got the keys to the kingdom and I want to get through? It don't let any of that stop you. Ultimately, it's you against the world. It's your family eats or they do. And you got to eat. You got to succeed. You got to move forward. And if guess what? No one uses mail anymore. I got 3 pieces of mail in the last 3 days. Right? If you FedEx your resume or your pitch or whatever directly to the office, guess what they have to do? They have to sign for it. They got it. You have 100% open rate, and they probably read it. And I even make it even more worse. So what we do now is I actually see this here. I have a little cell phone sewn into this card, and I actually pitch them directly, right? So I go, hey, it's nice to meet you. I should give a copy of my book, and I FedEx them, and that's how we kind of open up, gigs nowadays.
And the crazy thing is, I was actually looking at those for my own company, and they're actually reasonably priced. They're not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
Technology.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using them now for 11 years.
Yeah.
So it's
they were probably a lot more expensive when they first started.
Yeah. So I was at a buddy's house a couple years back in Europe, in Belgium, and he had this one of these things, but it was red, and it had a Ferrari emblem on it. So you open it up, and they're like pitching the Ferrari Enzo right inside the thing. So I took an X-Acto knife and I cut it open, and I found where the factory was in China. Went to Alibaba, backed into it, and then I found out I had them made for myself at the time for like $19 a piece. Now I think they're like $25 a piece if you get them done. Get 1,000 at a time. I think I've got probably 2,000 or 3,000, in boxes all over the place because we're just constantly sending them out in due course of business.
Now, if people are just listening, not watching us, so basically it's a screen. He can record a video on it. You open it up like a little book, and it's a lot better than something in writing, I guess.
It's shocking because when you open it up, there's little magnets, right? The magnets disengage, and then the video starts playing. And it's I've definitely had people tell me that it's absolute. They'll call you up and go, "What the hell was that?" Right? Or they'll call you up to go, "What the hell was that?" And let's do some business. In either way, you kind of win. Well, the worst is going to happen is they're going to be annoyed, and who cares? You'll never see them again, ever.
Now let's go back to your story. So you're jumping around from company to company. When did you start getting the idea that you wanted to put something together for yourself and actually build your own company?
Probably about 10 years ago. I feel like I kept getting messed over by the recruiters and kind of by these gatekeepers. They never really give you what they want. They're kind of keeping the majority of the money. They had none of the skill sets that I had, but they were profiting 30-40% from my labor. And I got ridiculously sick of it. I mean, I don't know how family friendly your show is, but I actually wrote a book, my first book, if you'll see the title. Technical.
Stop getting
for those
fucked.
who are not watching, it's basically, just think of it as a nerd's guide to salary negotiation, but it's got some cuss words in it. But yeah, we sold 1,000 books the first 2 weeks, that we published it. And then that's, I couldn't write my way out of a paper bag. I'd actually found a buddy's daughter who had written, a bunch of books from the age of 16. She got out of college. She's kind of looking for a gig. We worked this process out of this kind of these Zoom calls where you kind of push and pull through these interviews. Wrote the first book, and the next thing you know, I was getting calls on how'd you do that. We wrote another book for someone else, and again and again and again and again and again, and then here we are 2 years later.
What was the original intention of the book? I mean, I think a lot of people that I at least talk to, it's not necessarily making money off the book. It's either kind of getting their story out there, kind of getting people to talk to them, or just kind of therapeutic. I mean, what was the idea for yourself?
So for the first book, it was really I needed to hire more software engineers. I needed them to trust me. Best way to do that is to teach them how to negotiate, because nerds, we don't know how to negotiate. It's just that's how it is. And it worked. I was able to hire my people and whatever. But ultimately, when people write these books, it's not about book sales. Think of it as a vector, kind of like coughing is a vector for a virus to infect someone else. A vector is a way of shoehorning your way into radio shows, into TV, into if you do a search on my name, Scott Turman, Turman on Google, you'll see that Google kind of separates out me in a kind of something called a knowledge panel. You'll also know if you do Bill Gates, you'll see the same type of knowledge panel, right? So when people they look you up, they're like, oh my God, this guy's clearly got something going on. You click on news, you'll see that I'm in the Wall Street Journal, I'm in Forbes, I'm in a bunch of different places. That all starts from a book. That ability for a reporter or whatever to say, oh yeah, I have to go to his editor and say, look, this guy's okay. Here's the proof. That's kind of how it starts, and then you just kind of build it from there. Kind of get known for things, build your expertise, but really you're kind of proving your expertise, right? I mean, if you build, I don't know, laboratories for a business, for a living, why not write a book on how to build a lab and being the authority on it, and then go make a bunch of money as a consultant building labs, as an example. The book is really just the vector into these positions and into these consulting gigs.
Did you have any doubt in putting the book together? I mean, where did the idea come from, and what was it a long run to actually get to that point? I mean, what happened there?
It's funny. I don't have doubt ever.
Oh.
It's either going to work or it won't. And if it doesn't, at least I learned something, right? There's never, you just go, well, I can see the people succeeding with this, right? And I don't know if I'll succeed, and it's a little bit, it's kind of an investment making it happen. But what's the worst that's going to happen is you're going to learn stuff. So I don't ever have doubt, because at the very minimum, I'm going to get something out of it, whether it's learning or maybe I get more business out of it. And I mean, we wrote our second book that really kind of outlines how to build a brand with a book. It's literally what we do. We FedEx these books out. We want to go get more clients. We want to kind of close clients to go write their books for them. It's what I say anybody should do. If you have some area of expertise that you need to kind of give proof positive, what you're talking about, we'll go write a book. And it'll kind of allow you to shoehorn your kind of way into places. But yeah, I don't have doubts, because either you learn something or you win. Either way, you win.
Has that always been your mindset, even when you were younger?
Yeah. So I started another company 14 years ago. When my son was born, my mom gave him a fire truck that had lead paint in the actual lead of the paint itself. He never touched it, but I found out through some other means that it had lead in it, so he never got lead poisoning, right? So I kind of started thinking, man, I wish there was a way to kind of test for lead for these toys. And I found a lady who had a patent out of Boston, and then so she made the product. I bought $1 gazillion worth of product, and I put it online called check4lead.com. I didn't know if that was going to work. I had no idea. And then we made 30 grand a day. And so, when the law changed, it kind of says that, yeah, you're going to test for lead when you do renovation on older houses, because you don't want to lead poison your neighbors because you're sanding down some lead paint, because it was built prior to 1978. I didn't know if that was going to work, but I knew I was going to learn how to do e-commerce. At the very minimum, to learn how to deliver product, how to develop a product, how to get a trademark, how to, all those things that it takes to run a business. I didn't know if it was going to work, but you give it a shot. So I was doing 2 or 3 of these type of projects per year, hoping one would hit. And then that was every year I would just kind of start the new year off with, well, I'm going to try this and this and this. And then until one of them hit. And then the other two would fail, which is fine. And then what's left is the one that kind of made it. I mean, you either get a base hit or a home run. And every once in a while you get a home run.
How long would you keep those base hits going for, or those home runs going for? Is it until they're dead in the ground, or just, try to get them established as possible and then kind of add the next ones?
So years ago, I finally learned what EBITDA was. Earnings. It's just kind of a way of measuring the success and the actual, capitalization of a company. So the way I do it is once you reach a certain level of capital, the thing makes enough net revenue. You can get between 2 and 6% X as far as the sale of the business. So I just buried my head in books on how to build the sell and all those different books that kind of really tell you how to make a company desirable by an equity company. So once we reach a certain threshold, I then go shop it around and get it sold. And I sold Chick-fil-A a couple of years ago, but it took 10 years. But we sold it, after it reached a certain threshold. And now that's kind of how we do all these things. Although I don't know if I would ever sell BrightRay because I don't. All I do is interview astronauts and submarine commanders for a living. I don't need. Why would I want to do anything else? I have the greatest job in the history of jobs. So yeah, I don't know if I would. This may not fall into that category.
Well, I guess it takes us to the next question. For you selling your businesses, what have you learned from the first time you sold a business to what you know now?
Your business has no value unless you can step away from it. If your business is a consulting gig, right, and it makes $500,000 to $1 million a year, but you have to be there for it to run, it's not a business. You've created yourself a very well-paying job because it's not sellable. Until you can remove yourself from the process, whether it's through processes, employees, whatever, W-2 employees, 1099s, you don't have a business. You have a job you created for yourself. If you can't go on vacation for July, December, you have a job that you've created for yourself. And it certainly isn't transferred to an equity company. They don't want anything to do with it because you are the business. So that's the rule number one, is that you've got to remove yourself. It's funny. I was in Greece for my honeymoon, and I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, and it seriously changed my life. It took 4 years to change my life, but I realized in that book, the impetus was to remove yourself from processes, right? You draw your process out, and you start to remove yourself through automated processes or humans, right? You kind of plug them in. The moment you do that, the business has value because now it's transferable at like a 2 or 3x kind of way. If you net $500,000 a year, it's probably worth 1.5 million because an operator can step into that and probably add a zero to it, who maybe knows Facebook advertising better than you do, or they see the value because they've already got that expertise. They just need the brand name or the trademark or whatever. But rule number one, if you can't walk away from the business and it would still function, you don't have a business. You have a job. You just have a really well-paying job for yourself.
You said that you don't plan to leave BrightRay. Where do you plan to take the business? Where do you plan to go in the next 5 years?
I'd like to. We grew the team to well, I guess it will be 12 in a week or so. I want to grow this to where it's just a constant flow of awesomeness. When you think about a book, it really is. It's just a brand building mechanism, right? It's a personal brand building mechanism. Personal branding is not what people find on the internet about you. Personal branding is a verb. It's the act of creating what people find on you on the net, right? Unless someone types in your name and Google doesn't separate you out from the pack, you haven't necessarily won the branding game yet, right? I really enjoyed that process of my other writers and all the kind of the whole crew creating these because these books are they're kind of foundational origin story for these people that kind of explode after that if they do it correctly, and then it becomes kind of a sniper rifle. You just FedEx your book to whoever you're trying to do business with, or if you're trying to get on CNN or Fox News, well, FedEx your book right to the producer there, with a pitch. It all becomes way easier when they see what you've done in the past, But as far as where we're going, I don't know. I mean, we're already doing books for really, really amazing people. All I do is just talk to awesome people. And I'd like to do that basically forever. Now, would I like to be in Provence for December? Yes, I sure would. And that requires, what's that? South of France for like a whole month? Yeah, sure. Yeah, and the business does run itself. I've definitely removed myself, from this. It can run by itself, but ultimately, it's I don't want to go anywhere. It's just too much fun.
Could you work remotely?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we are 100% remote. Every one of our employees they're across the United States. We have people in Finland. We have people in India. We have people in Micronesia. We have them in California, and we have them all over the place. And it's almost like we could always work from home, but COVID had to prove it to corporate America, right? Yeah. I already kind of knew that, right? So I don't know, it's 2 years we just close all offices and just remote everything. And the biggest pain in the butt now is having to get a tax ID in every state. But whatever. Other than that, it's been interesting, kind of that learning curve in order to employ humans in a remote way. Once you get it, you'll never want to go back.
You said something interesting about people trying to win their brand, their name, right, online. Is there something that people listening right now could do to at least take steps? And I know, I guess the big one is going to get the book to get your name out there. But is there anything right now that they could do just today if they haven't done already?
Go buy this book. So this guy's name is Jason Bernard. We wrote it with him a couple months ago. He's the world authority in triggering those knowledge panels for Google. Google says he's the world authority on Google knowledge panels. Okay. He's out of Paris, France. He's Englishman. He lives in Paris, France. And this book will break it down for any reader on how to kind of trigger the knowledge panels. And a book is a very easy way to do it, but also it's also a Wikipedia page is easy too. Good luck getting that, because you have to have source articles, about you in Forbes, in Time Magazine and such. There's kind of the higher bar. This, writing a book's a little lower bar. Jason's method, requires you basically to train Google on who you are. He likens Google as a child, and you're kind of training them on who you are. So, ScottTurman.com. Well, who are you? Well, here's my LinkedIn profile. This is my headshot. Notice how it agrees on all my social profiles. All my social profiles, they point to one another. They all point back to ScottTurman.com. And Google eventually goes, I guess you're the brand. Boom, here's your knowledge panel. You claim it, sand it down, add what you want, description, add your social links, and you're good to go. But it's easy peasy when you write a book. It triggers in like a week. The other method can take a couple of months. But definitely this book will give you a step-by-step guide on how to do it.
How often does the process, the way that it takes in the knowledge change? Is it weekly, monthly? Every couple of years? How fast does that constantly change?
You mean as far as what Google requires to kind of trigger that?
Yeah.
I've seen it happen in hours. I could go make a change on maybe I had an article in entrepreneur.com or something like that. And I've seen it update in Google News within 15 minutes. So you never know the time. But I've also seen it take 3 days. So you never really know on the sample rate that Google's kind of coming out for your information.
Looking back at your career, before you even started your businesses, before you kind of grew this knowledge base, where do you see the lowlights? The things that you kind of had to work through on getting to where you're at now?
So I guess the lowest point in my life was probably having to squat in a house in downtown Orlando because the internet bubble had just burst. There were no jobs and there was no money. I didn't really have family I could lean or I wanted to lean on, and you're effectively homeless. That was kind of that was probably the worst part. But 3 years later, 4 years later, I had built a real business. So it just. My life has been pretty easy. That was bad, but I wasn't living under a bridge. It's at least I had friends I could kind of depend on, and so no, life has been pretty easy up to this point. Obviously everything is how much work you put into it. But when you figure the average life is 72, 73, and if you're in your 20s just starting out, just know you're going to be dead in 50 years. You better get to work. You better make it happen right now. You will be dead in 50 years if you're in your 20s. And then it just gets worse as you get older. Tick tock, tick tock. You better hurry up. Sleep is for the weak. You don't have time for that. Wake up early, go to bed late, get it done, because you're running out of time. And they go, oh, that work mentality, that's what's killing America and that's what's killing the world. Great, then don't do it. Don't do anything. Work for someone else. This isn't for you. Entrepreneurship isn't for you then. If you think that's really how it's going to be, it's not for you, because it is a ton of work. But you can do it. You can shape and craft your life, in such a way where you can live better than the top 1% of the entire world if you do it right. It comes down to the right idea, the right timing, and the hard work that kind of goes behind it. Now, is it going to happen for everybody? No, but it certainly won't happen unless you try, for sure.
Where does that passion come from? I mean, you can see, a little bit of anger, a little bit of passion when you speak those words of, hey, get to work, do the activities. Is there something that comes to mind that makes you so passionate about kind of telling that story, telling that information to the masses?
I don't know. I guess my dad, I don't know, again, family friendly. My dad was a bit of an asshole, but he was a hard worker. He worked his butt off all the time, and he failed and succeeded here and there, but just because he worked his butt off didn't mean he would succeed, universally speaking. So, I mean, you could still work your butt off and still lose. And that's what's awful. But if you don't work at all, you're going to lose 100% of the time because no one's going to give you anything. And I don't know, man, I just feel like everybody has it in them to go kind of build that life they want to lead. Everybody has it, but it's just, it's kind of like that. Well, when did you know that you could go do that? I'm like, I didn't. I just tried it. Just try something. But all that sometimes, if you're making $10 an hour, it's going to be hard to try anything, right? But you kind of got to figure your way through it. You kind of got to navigate the BS related to, because poverty is awful and it makes people do awful things. And it's very difficult to kind of rise up out of it, but it's definitely hard work is kind of that main ingredient,
I'm gonna finish off with this question right here. I mean, you talked about basically the poverty. You talked about kind of pushing through. I mean, I think for the most of us, we kind of worked away from pain and then towards pleasure, right? It's kind of switching it. Okay. How quick or when in the process after you were kind of basically homeless did you switch from going away from the pain of being homeless to the pleasure of being who you are today?
Well, it basically once I was squatting in a house in downtown, and I would really work on my resume. I was basically paying the power bill for a house that I didn't lease or own, and I would just work every single day. I had dial up, right? Back when that was a thing. Internet was kind of brand new back then. And I literally learned languages, C#, .NET, all the languages I knew that I could go leverage to go find a job. I would just study till 2-3 in the morning, every single day, every day, until I finally had enough that I could be useful to a position. And then, I actually found that next job was like 70 grand a year, which is like $1 billion when you have nothing. That is $1 billion when you've got zero in your bank account, or better yet, you're negative $250 in your bank account. And, or better yet, your Jeep, the starter is broken. So you're literally having to park on hills so you can start your car down hills. I've done that, did that for a very long time. I just worked my way out of it. I basically made myself valuable by learning that skill set, to go get that job. It took a while, but I kind of managed to get my way out of it.
Well, thank you, Scott, for telling your story. If people are listening right now and they kind of want to hear more of your story, more of basically the people you're helping tell their stories, what's the best way of them finding more information about you, Scott?
So you can find my company at brightray.com, BRIGHTRAY.com, or look me up on Google, Scott, TURMAN, ScottTurman.com. We're on all the socials, and we'd love to write your book. Just give us a call, make an appointment, and we'll see what you got. Not everybody makes it, but if you have the right story and you have the kind of the vision, we definitely like to write your book.
Thank you guys for listening. I mean, go find Scott's book. His information is in the show notes right now. I mean, there's so many key takeaways that you could take away from what Scott said. I think one of the biggest one that I know I took away is there's so many smart people out there. There's so many people that want everything to be perfect before they actually do it. it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. Just go do it. And if it fails, learn from that failure, and you're going to be that much better off than you were the day before you even tried it. So do the activity, take the chance, go forward, and go find Scott. Thanks, guys. Please subscribe. Please share. Talk to you later.